And hello once again, my name is artsy Lupus, and today we're going to be looking at feminist theatre. This is another of these little videos that I do about lectures on whatever it happens to be to do with literature. That is today. I know, very, very fun times. So before we get into it, if you have appreciated these videos that I've made, you can always support me if you so desire. If you don't want to, okay, whatever. You can check out my books, or you can check out my Patreon, but we're going to look at that later. So let's get into feminist theatre. Let's first just get something out of the way. Okay. What is feminism? Okay. That's a very, very broad area. So let's just first say, what is feminism? Okay. Let's first just say that there is actually no such thing as feminism. There are many different feminisms. You cannot just say that every type of feminist agrees with the same thing. There are different types of feminists that are looking at different things from different perspectives, right? You get liberal feminists, or bourgeois feminists, you get radical feminists, you get black feminists, which that isn't just saying they're black people, it's actually a type of feminism. You get socialist or Marxist feminism. There are many different types of feminism. They all agree with different things, but a common, sort of some of the common things that you might find within these is that patriarchy is bad, that gender is in some sense constructed, and that there is sort of patriarchal pervasiveness in the canon, right? So what is decided as being good is generally men, written by men, right? So when it comes to literature, right? When it comes to the canon. I've briefly mentioned this before in a different video, but I'm going to do it now anyway because, you know, it's good to have it be set up. But what is the canon? Canon, spelled differently to canon. I know. There's the canon that shoots things, which has two ends, and there's canon, which is this canon, which has one end. A canon, in the sense, is basically the range of texts that is considered to be of the highest value determined by people over time. Now, generally, the literary canon has been overwhelmingly white, male, straight, right? Those are the things that the canon usually is. So, of course, there you get it being that women have been excluded. There's many reasons for this, that you could go into in more, if you went into like a deeper feminist analysis. We're not going to go into that now, but that is something to keep in mind, right? That women have been kind of excluded from the canon for a long time. When it comes to women in the canon, there are very, very few that are generally brought up, because someone will just go, oh, well, Jane Austen. I'm like, yeah, you can name Jane Austen and a handful of other women who are generally considered to be part of the canon, whereas you can name 20 men. So, like, that is the problem, right? So, let's say then, what is feminist theatre? Feminist theatre is theatre that in some way looks at these kinds of feminist concepts and interrogates them in some sense. So feminist theatre doesn't just mean there's woman in it, regardless of what certain people online might try to claim. Sad little boys who are angry without understanding what feminism is, because that's one of the things. Feminism is very much not understood by most people. Now, I've actually done a whole bunch of videos going into feminism, mostly ecofeminism. So if you wanted to look at that, it's a much like older video of mine, or videos, there's a whole series of them that you can look at to learn more about feminism itself. But today we just can look at that. So one other question here is, what has the historical role of women been in theatre? Now think about, we're all taught this, right? When you did English in high school, you were taught that Shakespeare, during Shakespeare's time, women didn't play. They didn't perform. Men performed, including female roles. They often would have younger or more effeminate men playing woman roles. So, women were explicitly excluded from being actors. They were explicitly excluded from being in the theatre, from actually taking part. They would be female characters, but not played by females, right? That's the problem. So, when women then basically got more rights, they could start doing things like theatre for themselves. So now you get various, like, say, feminist theatre groups and stuff like that who are explicitly feminist or explicitly all-female. So that they'll, say, do something like putting on an all-female show, like how there used to be only male shows, right? Shakespeare's time was only men who got to perform. So you get some feminist theatre groups who will do the same thing, but in reverse. They'll be like, okay, well, we're only going to have women, including for male roles. So you could do things like that. There's many different things that could be done. So let's look at some of the common themes and trends that you will find in feminist theatre. Now, in this little screen that I put up here, I actually put the ones I'm going to talk about first in the middle. So I'm going to talk about ones in the middle, then on the left, then on the right. That's going to be the order. So patriarchy is the first thing. Patriarchy, just as a quick explanation, is the idea that sort of maleness in general is superior, and we have lived in a patriarchal world for a long time, right? So patriarchal ideology is the idea that sort of men are superior to women, but patriarchal society is the reality of that ideology, right? The majority of rulers, the majority of bosses, the majority of everything has been men, right? The patriarchs, right? The majority of people who run the world are men. The majority of people who run businesses are men. The majority of people who run religions are men. This is patriarchy. So if you wanted to do feminist theatre, you could tackle those concepts. You could break those things down. You could say, I'm going to interrogate and attack this particular thing. I'm going to go after patriarchy, and I'm going to analyze it, discuss it, break it down, etc. You could do that. Then also the ideas of femininity and masculinity. Now, something that's important to understand is that femininity and masculinity does not mean men and women. That's not what they mean. Masculine doesn't mean man, feminine doesn't mean woman. You get masculine woman, you get feminine men. It happens. Femininity and masculinity are gendered concepts that are societally determined and then ascribed to people. So basically, society makes up these concepts, and then we label people as being either feminine or masculine based on arbitrary factors. So let's just take, for instance, some things that have been considered to be masculine in the past. Wearing pants. Wearing pants is masculine. Women wore dresses. But nowadays, women wear pants too. And also, it's not just like, oh, women wear like baggy man work pants. Women wear obviously not all women, but women will have sort of, say, tight-fitting jeans, which then accentuate feminine characteristics. So, jeans were masculine. Then, anyone could wear them, and then they made them form-fitting for women. So then it became also feminine. So, like, pants aren't masculine or feminine anymore. They're neither. You can get masculine pants, you can get feminine pants, but, of course, who determines that is ridiculous. Like, we will often say, so are jeans, right? Tight-fitting skinny jeans, it's more feminine. Loose, baggy jeans, that's more masculine. But who the hell said that? That sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? But that's the point. It is societally determined. It's not real. It's something that people have decided over time. Other things are also masculine and feminine, right? It was often very feminine to do things like bathing. You still get some people who seem to, like men, who seem to think that bathing and grooming themselves is something feminine, which is just sad and also, like, gross. Like, oh, they don't, like, wash themselves properly because that's a womanly thing to do. These are concepts that are determined by society, and so you can undermine them. You can have a theatre production in which you undermine femininity and masculinity. Make more women masculine, make more men feminine, undermine what it means to be feminine or masculine, have a character who is mostly masculine but has feminine traits, or vice versa. You can do these kinds of things. These are themes and trends you can explore and interrogate in feminist theatre. Then also, of course, sex and gender. Sex and gender are distinct from femininity and masculinity. Sex refers to the biological sort of reality, right? Penis, vagina. You could also say other things also part of sex, like karyotypes or karyotypes, however you said. Once again, I read things, I don't hear them said out loud, so if I mispronounce things, I apologize. Basically, sex would be things like that, right? Your X, Y, X, whatever chromosomes, your penis, vagina, and secondary sexual characteristics, the various, that would be other things, you know, like breasts and what have you, are secondary, and then also things like your hormones and such, right? Estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, those kind of things make up sex. But even then, sex, it's not a binary. You get people who are born intersex. So even then, there aren't two. So anyone who says that is just wrong. Then you get gender. Gender is a societally determined construct. Personally, when I see those things like, oh, there's 72 genders, I think that's kind of silly. I think there's an infinite array of possible gender identities. Trying to put a definitive number on it, I don't think really works, because gender is more of a spectrum than it is something that can be definitively classified. But some people do like classifications, and if you like classifications, go for it. But that's something you could do in feminist theatre, for instance. You could interrogate sex, gender, their relation to each other, and their disconnection from each other. For instance, what if you were to, because gender is kind of masculinity and femininity working together, and everyone has both. No one is only masculine, no one is only feminine, and also determining what is feminine and what isn't feminine is determined by society. So, for instance, crying is often seen as feminine, but you could get the most manly man crying over the death of their parent, and what are they suddenly now, like, womanly because they're crying? Like, it's silly and stupid to have these kind of rigid definitions. So you can do that in feminist theatre. You can interrogate these things, go after them. You can subvert them in many ways. The next thing is sexuality, which is distinct from sex and gender. Sexuality or sexual orientation is who you are attracted to. There's many different types of sexualities, right? And I would also say it's like a spectrum ranging from asexuality to pansexuality with various different things in between, right? Asexuality is no sex. Pansexuality is being attracted to anyone. It doesn't actually mean being attracted to everyone. It means being attracted to anyone. So, which are distinct from each other. If you're just attracted to everyone, could probably be quite difficult to live your life, because if every single person you see is sexy, it can be difficult to live. But if but pansexuality is usually, at least the way I see it for myself, is that it's being like, I don't care what is between someone's legs. Essentially, it's the person. So pansexuality, asexuality, and you get heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual. You get various other types, like you get demisexualities. There's all sorts of things, and these can be explored in feminist theatre. A lot of feminist theatre, like say the Vagina Monologues, does explore these kinds of things. It explores heterosexual sex and also explores homosexual sex from a woman's perspective, because they are distinct from each other, and they should be interrogated in some or another sense. That is what feminist theatre can do. Speaking of the Vagina Monologues, a common trend you'll find in a lot of feminist theatre is the monologue structure. Essentially, it will be women telling their story. Not like putting on a play, they're sitting on a stage telling their story, they're monologuing. It will often be a solo performance, but that's what it is. And now, you'll get some people who might say, oh, that's not like theatre. Basically, people who are boring will be like, oh, that's not theatre, they're just standing and talking. Okay, well, what about like a stand-up routine? That's also a type of performance, and it's just a person standing and talking. So if you try to criticize these things, at least try to be honest about your critiques of them. So monologues, right, are a way to interrogate for like a person to express themselves in a deep personal sense a lot of the time, right? A monologue is a way that you could tell your story to an audience. You could actually look at yourself and explain your stories and your feelings and your thoughts. This is very common in feminist theatre, the Vagina Monologues obviously being the most famous version of this. And for those who have not read or watched the Vagina Monologues, I would very much recommend it. It's a fantastic text. Pretty much like a baseline text in feminism at this point. Then you get heteroglossia. Heteroglossia, for those who don't really know their words very well, there are prefixes. Hetero doesn't mean straight. Hetero means different. When you say heterosexual, it's saying basically you're sexually attracted to the different. That's what heterosexual means. So heteroglossia is actually about language, right? And it's about different voices. It's about different people having different perspectives. The idea of heteroglossia in theatre, in feminist theatre especially, is to understand the idea that there is no such thing as just woman. There are different women from different cultures, from different walks of life, from different classes, from different places, who have different experiences. You can't just say woman's experience. There are different types of women who have different types of experiences. A rich woman will have a different life to a poor woman. A white woman will have a different experience to a black woman. A disabled woman will have a different experience to an abled woman. A bisexual woman will have a different perspective to a lesbian woman, etc., etc. Right? So, rather than trying to say there is womanhood, you would rather say there's different types of womanhood, and then having theatre that can explore those differences, rather than trying to claim that there's just an immutable category called woman, which there isn't. There's many different ways of looking at that. The next thing is motherhood. That is something very common that you'll find in a lot of feminist theatre. Now, also, if you just heard me saying, oh, there's not something that is individual to just woman, and now I'm talking about motherhood, and it's like, see, motherhood is a thing only women can do. A lot of women cannot have motherhood. Either they're prepubescent, right, so they're incapable of having child, which still makes them female. They could be sort of post-menopause, in which case they can't have children anymore, right? And then, you're still going to try and define them through motherhood, or they might never have children, or they could be incapable of having children at all, for various reasons. So trying to say that womanhood is tied to motherhood explicitly, and that is like a defining characteristic of woman, is very exclusionary. Not every woman can have children, and not every woman wants to have a child. So, but a lot of women do have children, or do want to have children, or have motherhood forced upon them. So these are things that can be explored. You can have theatre feminist theatre that looks at motherhood, either from not wanting motherhood, or wanting motherhood, struggling with motherhood, or loving motherhood. There's many different ways you could look at motherhood. Motherhood is a very interesting concept, which is distinct from fatherhood. So that is what makes it quite interesting. Then, of course, you get witchcraft. Witchcraft is a thing that has been associated with women for a very, very long time. A very long time. Whenever you got the old witch trials and stuff, it was generally women who were the ones who were being attacked. Now, a feminist analysis of witchcraft, basically, it's a very interesting thing. Witchcraft was scary to a lot of like older people, not older as in like old people, but like olden times, and also some modern superstitious weirdos, because witchcraft basically gave women power over men. It was a type of power that they did not have access to. So when you look at witchcraft from that perspective, witchcraft can be seen as something that elevates women and empowers them. So in feminist theatre, you could look at witchcraft as something that is empowering to women, as a way of undermining existing notions of womanhood in general. So witchcraft has there's a lot of like sort of feminist theory about witchcraft. Very interesting stuff. If you want to learn about that, you just have to go and look into it. Very interesting stuff. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is the male gaze. This is something you'll often find also in a lot of feminist film, because the male gaze is best expressed in film in many ways because it's just easiest to see. So I've made a video, it's still like the video that's done the most views on this channel, about the gaze. Now the gaze, when I say the gaze, I'm talking about G-A-Z-E, not the gaze as in the homosexuals. I'm talking about the male gaze. So the gaze is a very, very broad concept, and I went into it in super like in depth in that other video. But the male gaze is the one that's most pertinent generally to feminist theatre. And to feminist literature in general. The male gaze is the idea that we cater sort of what we create to the male, right? When you want to have, say, the easiest way to show it is film, as I said. I want men to like my movie. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to often have panty shots, breast shots. I'm going to make sure that the women have their cleavage out so that they look very sexy and you know, breedable, I suppose, to men that are watching this. I want to make it appealing to men on a very sad level. So that's the male gaze, right? Sort of saying, I'm going to cater to what a man wants. And the feminist theatre and literature in general can subvert that by saying, no, we're going to rather go against that, or we're going to have something like the female gaze. We're going to subvert the idea of the male gaze, or we're going to just critique the male gaze directly. Right? There's many different things you can do. So that is pretty much a brief overview of sort of feminist theatre and things that can be done in feminist theatre, what is feminist theatre, etc., etc., etc. Hopefully, it has been helpful, beneficial, whatever, and if it has, you can feel free to try to support me, and that would be absolutely lovely, obviously. I'd be so happy. By doing that, what you can do is you can check out some of my books, or you can support me on Patreon, both of which are in the description. And if you can't do those things, or you don't want to, like you just despise me, which, I mean, okay. But if you want to, it doesn't matter. You can also do the like, comment, subscribe stuff. That is the other stuff that does help. And yeah. Otherwise, I hope that you have a great day, week, and month ahead. Goodbye.